I've been a veterinarian for many years, but sometimes there are cases that stay with you forever. Mittens the kitten was one of those cases, a story that made me realize how fragile life can be and how much hope can bloom from the most unexpected places. It was a rainy afternoon when she arrived at the clinic. I was in the middle of a busy day, juggling multiple patients, when a call came in. Someone had found a tiny kitten abandoned in a cardboard box on the side of the road. She was only a few months old, but she was in bad shape. Her fur, once fluffy and soft, was matted with dirt and debris. She was trembling in fear, her big eyes wide and pleading, but it wasn't her condition that immediately struck me, it was her leg. The poor thing could barely move, and when I gently touched it, she cried out in pain. Her tiny leg was swollen, and it looked like it had been broken for a while, untreated. Without hesitation, I gathered my things and rushed out to meet her. The person who brought her in was a young woman, visibly upset. She explained that she had been walking when she saw the little kitten limping, dragging herself along the wet pavement. She couldn't leave her there, so she scooped her up and rushed to get help. I could see the genuine concern in her eyes as she handed Mittens over to me. "Please save her," she whispered, almost as if she were asking for a miracle. As soon as I laid Mittens on the examination table, I took a deep breath. Her small, fragile body was so delicate, but her will to survive was evident. I carefully examined the leg, which was clearly broken. From what I could tell, it was a compound fracture. Bone was exposed, and the wound was already showing signs of infection. Her tiny body had already been fighting a battle against the pain for some time. I looked at her again, her pleading eyes, the way she clung to my hands as I tried to assess her injuries, and I knew we had to do something. We couldn't just let her suffer. I gently wrapped Mittens in a soft towel and reassured the woman who had brought her in that we would do everything we could. "We'll take care of her. She's in good hands now," I promised. As the surgery was scheduled, I couldn't help but think about how easily Mittens might have been overlooked by others. Abandoned, broken, and left alone in the world, yet here she was, clinging to life, hoping for someone to give her a chance. That hope would drive everything that followed. Surgical preparations began almost immediately. We needed to stabilize Mittens before performing the surgery to repair her leg. I carefully sedated her, knowing that the process would be painful but necessary. We couldn't risk her being awake during the procedure. I scrubbed in, my mind focused on the task at hand. The fracture was severe, and the leg needed to be set properly to avoid long-term damage. With a delicate touch, I began to clean the wound, removing any dirt and debris that had settled in her small body. The bone had splintered in several places, and it wasn't just a matter of aligning the pieces. Infection had already begun to take hold, complicating the surgery. The first part of the procedure was critical, getting the infection under control and ensuring that there was enough healthy tissue to work with. Hours passed. The team worked in quiet coordination, and as time went on, I could feel the weight of the responsibility pressing down on me. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. This was a life we were trying to save, and it wasn't just about fixing her leg, it was about giving Mittens a future. Eventually, the surgery was complete. Her leg was reset, and a small pin was inserted to hold the bone in place as it healed. We wrapped her up, knowing that the hardest part wasn't over yet. Infections could still cause complications, and her small body would need all the strength it had to survive. I remember the moment we finished and I looked down at her, still small, still fragile, but I could see something in her eyes. Even in her pain, even under sedation, there was a flicker of trust. She had survived the surgery. She had made it through that first test, and for the first time, it felt like maybe there was a chance for Mittens after all. The next few days were a blur of monitoring, careful medication, and lots of rest. I visited Mittens frequently to check on her progress, and every time I did, I could feel a little more hope rising. She was a fighter. Her appetite had returned, and she was starting to show signs of healing. Her leg was still fragile, but she was a survivor. It was too soon to say whether she would make a full recovery, but every little improvement was a victory. As I watched her slowly regain strength, I couldn't help but think about her future. The kind woman who had found her and brought her to the clinic had asked if she could adopt Mittens after the recovery process. She had fallen in love with the kitten the moment she held her, and her sincerity and kindness were clear. But there were still months of healing to go before Mittens could leave the clinic, and we would have to wait and see how things progressed. In the meantime, I continued to do everything I could to help Mittens along the road to recovery. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of her journey, and mine as well. The recovery process would take weeks, maybe even months, but I knew one thing for certain. Mittens had already shown us something remarkable. Against all odds, she had fought through pain and fear, and that determination would carry her through whatever came next. As the days turned into weeks, Mittens' recovery became a story of resilience and progress. Her leg was healing, slowly but steadily, but there was something else happening, something that was just as important. She was healing emotionally, too. When Mittens first arrived at the clinic, she was terrified. Her big eyes would widen at the slightest movement, her tiny body rigid with fear. But as the weeks passed, I began to see a change in her. She was no longer just a broken kitten fighting to survive. She was becoming something more, a playful, curious, and affectionate little soul who was beginning to trust again. I remember the first time she purred. It was soft, almost tentative, but it was enough to bring a smile to my face. It had been so long since I had heard that sound, and I knew that we were on the right path. Mittens wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. As her leg healed, we started introducing physical therapy. At first, she resisted. Understandably so, she had been in pain for so long that any movement was met with hesitation. But slowly, she began to trust again, and with each little exercise, her confidence grew. Her leg was becoming stronger, and so was her spirit. She started to walk a little more each day, and then run, her little tail flicking with excitement. The first time she managed to leap onto the low couch in the clinic's waiting room, I felt a wave of relief. It wasn't just a physical milestone, it was a sign that Mittens had the willpower and heart to push forward, despite everything she had been through. It wasn't just the physical recovery that had taken us by surprise. It was her emotional transformation. At first, Mittens had been wary of everyone and everything. She would curl up in the corner of her bed, looking at us from a distance, unsure of who to trust. But gradually, she began seeking out affection. A soft tap on her shoulder, and she would nuzzle into my hand, her small body shaking as she finally allowed herself to be comforted. And then came the day when Mittens met her new family. It was a sunny morning, and the woman who had found Mittens on that rainy day returned to visit her. She had been coming by every week to check on her progress, and we had developed a bond over the weeks. She had been there through the darkest moments of Mittens' recovery, and I could see the love she had for this little kitten. "I just want her to be okay," she had said when we first spoke, her voice trembling. "I don't care what it takes, I'll be here for her." Her dedication had never wavered, and now, it was time to see if Mittens was ready for a new chapter in her life. I walked her into the room where Mittens was lounging, her small body stretched out on a blanket, playing with a crinkly toy. She looked up as we entered, and I could see the recognition in her eyes. She had come to know this woman, the one who had saved her, who had given her hope when there was none. The woman knelt down, and Mittens, hesitant at first, took a few tentative steps toward her. It was as if Mittens knew something important was happening, that this moment was different from all the others. The woman extended her hand, and Mittens sniffed it for a moment before rubbing her cheek against it. And that was it. The connection had been made. I watched as the woman gently scooped Mittens into her arms, holding her close. There was a quiet exchange between them, one filled with a kind of unspoken understanding, a mutual bond that had formed over weeks of care, hope, and healing. "I promised you I would come back for you," the woman whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "And now, I'm taking you home." It was one of those rare, perfect moments in veterinary medicine, the kind that makes all the long hours, the difficult cases, and the heartache worthwhile. Mittens, once a tiny, broken kitten abandoned on the side of the road, was now embarking on a new life. Her leg was fully healed, and she was stronger than ever, but more importantly, she was no longer the frightened, isolated kitten who had been found in a box. She had transformed into a playful, affectionate, and loving companion, ready to face whatever the future had in store. The woman left the clinic that day with Mittens tucked safely in her arms, the two of them starting a new chapter together. And while I knew I would miss Mittens, I also knew that this was where she belonged. She had found her forever home. I followed them out to the door, watching as they walked into the world beyond the clinic. Mittens, her little tail flicking behind her, looked up at her new owner with the same trust and affection I had witnessed over the past weeks. It wasn't just the end of a journey for Mittens. It was the beginning of a new one. I learned so much from Mittens. Her strength, her resilience, and her ability to trust again after everything she had been through were lessons I will carry with me forever. She had gone from broken and abandoned to loved and cherished. And that, in the end, is the greatest gift we can offer to any animal in need. As I looked out the clinic window, watching the two of them disappear into the distance, I felt a sense of peace. Mittens had found her place in the world, and I had been fortunate enough to be part of her journey. And just like that, her story became one of hope and second chances, proof that, even when the odds are stacked against us, there's always the possibility of a new beginning.